Am I supposed to drink to myself? I don't know. What the hell?
Let's drink to Kate, okay? To Kate. It is wonderful to have this opportunity to be back here with Kate, because some of you, I'm pretty sure, thought this was never going to happen, right? All right. But let me give you a little preview. Dana and I, as you know, have been friends for a long time, so Rob and I are on our 24-hour return journey from Holland yesterday because LAX is down 2 runways from construction and you have to wait a long time. And so when I get there, a message pops up on my phone. It's a tweet. Dana has arrived the day before. First, she couldn't let herself into the house because she couldn't remember the alarm code, but she conquered that. The dogs apparently greeted her as though she were their favorite mother, friend, whatever it is, leaving the dog sitter feeling really depressed, and wrote to us and said, the dogs were so much happier to see Dana than they were me when I came in. So Rob and I are braced. And then Dana writes in her usual gracious style, she said, a picture of Homer, Alaska at 45 degrees. And she said, it's 104 freaking degrees here. And I am caring for your dogs and waiting for you. And I thought, okay. But that's how things go, right? And you're still glad to be here, right?
I'm very glad to be here.
And it's wonderful to see so many of your friends and fans. How many Dana Maniacs are here? Actual official
Put
Dana Maniacs. Wow.
Hey, quite a few. Cool.
That's marvelous.
Carolyn, one of our managers, and Kathy, another one of our managers, are here today. And Carolyn has done a couple of Facebook videos on the Maniacs page, so if you want to go look.
Already.
She got it all in.
Your technology was shaky, but that's why we're also doing the real live stream, just in case, right? So here we are with K21, an event, as I said, that many of you thought might not happen. Dana, when did you get the idea for K21? It must have been before the cruel events of K20.
I got it in the middle. Well, I'm trying to remember when it was that I wrote K20. And I think it was while I was writing K20 that there's this, I got to back up and tell you the backstory. There's a town in Alaska called Seward. It's 100 miles south on the road from Anchorage. Some of you are nodding. And every 4th of July, based on a bar bet, a couple of old farts made in a bar in Seward a long, long time ago, they run a race called the Mount Marathon Foot Race. And it's actually kind of fun to see if you can find a place to park or a place to stay. I used to have friends who lived in Seward, so it wasn't a problem for me, and they were like half a block down from where the trail goes up the mountain. What was always fun to do was to go and watch them come back, because they're all filthy and bloody and scraped, and they're staggering along, and I always enjoy that because there's no way I was ever going to do anything like that. But I'm happy to cheer on the people that do. Well, one year, and I don't think this is the only year, but one year, a guy didn't come back. He's been gone, he's been missing, his body has never been found. And then that made me start thinking about all the people who go missing in Alaska, and there are a lot of them. And this was like 3, I think maybe even 4 years ago, and I think it was while I was writing Bad Blood, and I thought, ooh, I could write a story about missing people in Alaska. And then I thought, wouldn't it be cool if Kate was missing too? So now you know. My secrets are revealed. That's why the ending of Bad Blood.
Well, okay. Let's talk a little bit about Bobby. Those of you, when you finish this book, should read the author acknowledgments and so forth in the end. And you may be puzzled by why Dana thanks my husband, Robert Rosenwald, for his 75-inch TV. I was actually puzzled by it. So you want to tell us why?
Well, it's because Bernie has bought a 75-inch. I got the idea from Rob's television. He's a huge football fan. And, it's the biggest television I've ever seen in my life. I swear to you. It takes up a whole wall in their living room. She leaves the room when it's on. I really don't blame her because it's like you're practically in the game. And I thought, well, Bobby needs one of those at the Roadhouse. So, of course, I credit where credit is due. It's all due to Rob.
That was really nice of you. But the good news is you get to spend a fair amount of time in the Roadhouse bar in this book. And, in fact, you and I had a discussion in the writing of this book about all the people that have appeared in earlier books who we need to know what's been going on with them in the past few years. So you had a big cast to write about and kind of catch us up on, right?
I should kill more of them off. I mean, yeah, right. Was there a question there? What do you want to know?
The question was, how did you decide which ones to bring forward, I guess?
The ones who had a voice. You don't want to shove anybody forward because that screws with the writing. You don't want to do that. You let the people step up and speak. And if you've written these characters for 20 years, some of them has something to say, and you should listen when they say it. Bobby always has something to say.
I thought it was interesting, as the story evolved, they came forward and we learned what had happened to them or what was going on with them over time. But that was an interesting, for a writer, trying to mix that into moving the plot forward. Was that something of a challenge?
You tell me. You read the book. You liked it. You said you did. Did you lie? You want to visit with these people, but there's a certain amount of craft involved here because it can't just be checking in with people's favorite characters. There has to be a story. There has to be a narrative that drives, the events forward. It has to happen naturally. So, when I open with the scene at the Roadhouse, as I have done before, because I do love doing that, and it is and I am the lazy woman writer, I am. I'm just the lazy writer, if I can get a whole lot of explication, get rid of the expository lump by going around and listening in on all these conversations at, say, a potlatch or at Bernie's, I'm going to do it. And I can also drop clues while I'm at it, and if you're paying attention, I'm sure you picked up on them. And if you didn't, shame on you. You were bad readers.
Right, okay.
She's wondering now how much she missed.
I read this book months ago, so it actually was fascinating to watch it evolve. Whoa, did we lose the champagne? That's all right. Here, I have a convenient napkin. There you go. And the glass didn't break. All the champagne glasses, my daughter, when she got married last May, and Dana came down just for the event, decided to buy the champagne glasses at IKEA. So I don't remember how many she bought, like 150. Then she decided that rather than wash them, she would just give them to the bookstore, which I thought was really very clever. And
that apple didn't fall far from the tree.
and happily, in our extension, which now goes all the way to the end of the building, which now has a kitchen, I insisted on a dishwasher. And the rest of them were kind of going, why does she want a dishwasher? What I really also wanted was a washing machine, so I didn't have to take all the tablecloths home, but that's okay. But anyway, they were all going, why do we have the dishwasher? And then I brought in the champagne glasses, and it all became clear. But I think it's very nice, right? We used to do this with paper cups, and it wasn't really very elegant, and now, here we are. Lovely.
This is a first-class establishment.
It really is, right. While I was reading the book some months ago, I thought that some of Dana's very best writing about Alaska, which to me is maybe not the main character, but certainly is a main character in the books. Alaska, the landscape, the culture, people who commit suicide by Alaska, which you have written about, all sorts of wonderful things about Alaska. Did the fact that you hadn't written about Alaska for a little while make it more powerful for you? Why did you suddenly... Oh, that's a stupid question. Let me try it again. I can't even think of what I want to say. Right. It's not a question. I just wanted to say how wonderful it was. But what bits of Alaska particularly fascinated you in this book? You talked about the race, but what other aspects of Alaska?
Well, probably just the fact that it's so big, and people who have not been there don't really understand how big it is and how easy it is to get lost and go missing there. And don't let me forget to add one thing at the end of this comment. But the people go missing all the time. They go missing all the time in Alaska. There was a plane that crashed off the end of the Kenai airport in the winter in a snowstorm, and they didn't find it. Was a mile off the end of the runway. They didn't find it again until the following spring. I mean, that's what it's like there. It's people can just disappear. Now, and then what I wanted to add on was, just as I was finishing this book, the Alaska Dispatch, which is the state's paper of record, wrote this story about people going missing in Alaska. And they had statistics, and I said, well, I'll just slide those right in, won't I? And it's something like 3,000 people go missing in Alaska every year. Now, most of those people are runaways, and they return home. Most of them are teenagers. Some of them are adults. Most of them show up, I mean, if not immediately, certainly within a week or 10 days. But some people are never found again. So this is not, I mean, I don't even have to make this stuff up.
Well, no, you don't have to make it up. But one of the things that we have talked about when Dana started writing this series back in the early 90s, with A Cold Day for Murder, which was the first one, particularly people in publishing in New York, but lots of people really didn't know anything about Alaska and didn't really find it to be a particularly compelling place to set a book. And I have been saying to Dana for some years, and I think it's become truer and truer. She says it's Sarah Palin, but I don't think so. I hope not. I think in part it's the cruise industry. I mean, people in Arizona, I'll bet a lot of you have traveled to Alaska because it's a natural destination if you live here in the summer, right? Just Norway or Alaska, let's be real here. So part of it, I think, is the cruise industry. Some of it is television, The Greatest Catch. I was in Alaska last summer, and it was interesting that many of the people who were on the Crystal Cruise around the Northwest Passage with us really wanted to go and see, the Aleutians, right? Wanted to actually go visit.
They want to go to Dutch Harbor?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they wanted to walk, forever to get to Dutch Harbor.
Well, you can't, just for starters.
Well, right. So Alaska, I think, has become much more a part of people's consciousness, and I think it's wonderful that Dana, has written about it. You're all probably familiar with it more so than the average person since you have been reading her books. But don't you find now that, other people are interested in talking to you about Alaska or listening to you about Alaska? You too?
One thing that I love is when friends will write to me and say, well, I'm finally going to come up. So this is all the things that I want to do. And I've got a week. And they want to, they want to go to Denali. They want to see the mountain, which means they want to go to Denali National Park. And they want to come down to Homer and visit. And they, want to go bear flight seeing. And they want to go see the Arctic Ocean. And they have a week. And all I can do is write back and say, well, you can do like maybe 2 of 10 of those things that you want to do in a week, or you can stay longer. It's up to you. People just have no idea how big everything is, and the fact that, of course, we don't have any roads, comparatively speaking. You can drive north out of Anchorage and you can drive south out of Anchorage, and that's about it.
So you'd also get a really interesting cross-section of people. Years ago when we were doing one of these, I remember you said to me that Alaska attracts the radical right and the radical left. It's a place where people come to reinvent themselves, which was also true of Arizona, probably still is. So it makes for, a population that is not typical. That really is fun for you to draw on, right?
Well, it's fun, and it's a little horrific. Again, like I say, I don't have to make up a lot of this stuff. It comes right off the front page of the paper. The radical left and the radical right. A lot of these people want to live away from authority, so they can do whatever they want. And a lot of times, the things that they want to do happens to their families, and that's not very nice. And so, I mean, yeah, it's romantic in one sense. It also can be horrific in another.
No, I think it can be, and yet I always find it interesting when you say that. That Alaska, as far as I remember, is definitely a red state, isn't it?
The only reason Alaskans vote Republican is because they can't vote Libertarian and win. That's it. That's all. It is.
Well, we have another champagne casualty. Oh, well. All right. So, since we've called this discussion Kate 21, it's not going to blow anything to reveal that Kate is going to appear somewhere in the book.
There's a reason they call it the Kate Jugak series, yes.
Right. So, how much do you want to say about? Well, let's talk about how the book starts, because Kate isn't in it.
Well, no, she's not. She's missing.
That's right. And
this is a book about the missing.
Who is it that is primarily looking for her?
Well, I think most of the people most of the part, it eventually evolves throughout the telling of the book. I didn't look to see how many pages, that people kind of know where she is. The people in the know, the people that she's closest to, and everybody else just assumes she's dead.
Not you, however, or you wouldn't be here.
A recurring refrain is, I thought you were dead.
It is a recurring refrain. Now, Dana has, over the last few years, been involved in some home construction in Alaska, her own home, and then she's created a wonderful project, which we can talk about in a little while, called Story Knife. So I felt like your construction skills came into play, or at least your supervisory skills, in part of Kate's story. Would I be right?
No.
No?
No.
You just cribbed it all?
There's a guy named there was a guy named Dick Pronicki who went to, it's somewhere in Lake Clark Pass. I can't remember the name of it. And he was from outside somewhere, I can't remember. And he took 18 months to go and see if he could live in the wilderness. And he basically built his cabin by hand. And it's something, it's practically required. It was on PBS, and it's all film that he shot. And this is like back in the 70s, so it's actual film. I think it might even be black and white. And so this is practically required watching for Alaskans. We all watch this multiple times. So, and he wrote a really good book about building his cabin, and that's where most of that came from.
I thought it was fascinating. You remember our friend Laurie King wrote a book? I can't remember anything today. But it was after she'd built a house. She wrote a book called, was it Folly?
Yeah.
I think it was Folly, a wonderful book in which she was able to take her home constructions and actually turn it into a fascinating novel, which some of you who've gone through building or remodeling might recognize could really be a thriller.
When I had my house built, my builder made me come and do stuff. I didn't like it. I don't like power tools. It seems to me that I'm just as likely to shoot myself in the foot as I am to shoot a nail into a 2x4.
So, anyway, you get home building, you're out in the wilderness. We've heard about the race. Anything else that you want to... this is not a plot we can really discuss very much.
No, we can't really. Sorry.
No.
You can ask me if there's going to be another.
Okay. I'll ask you, is there going to be a Kate 22?
There definitely is.
Yay!
Not right away. Okay, not right away. I'm writing something else first, and then I'll write another Kate.
All right. And so why don't we talk about what is the something else first that you want to write about?
I recently read a biography of Cleopatra, and sorry, you've heard this. And I thought it was really interesting because generally the way we think of Cleopatra is, Queen of Egypt, Caesar, Antony, dead. That's basically the Cleopatra story arc. Well, she ruled for 22 years. She was the only Ptolemy. She was the last Ptolemy. She was the only Ptolemy whose the Egyptians never revolted against her. She was the only Ptolemy who learned Egyptian. And I also discovered that women in Alexandria, the Greeks in Alexandria, had rights. Serious rights. The right to divorce, the right to keep the children if they divorced, the right to alimony, the right to own and operate a business. This is a revelation to me. I was astonished. I didn't know any of this stuff, and it had been that way for centuries. And I thought, okay, there's a 22 span of time there that I could write about someone in that time period. And remember, when people are living in that time period, they don't know what's going to happen next. They don't know, that Actium is going to happen and that, Philippi and the rest of them. They don't know any of that stuff. They're just living their lives. So I thought it would be really interesting to set a crime fiction series in that 22-year time span. And I'm going to give it a try. We'll see if I can do it or not. I'm looking forward to it, and there are a lot of parallels, believe it or not, between this time and that time that, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it now because my hair stood up when I was reading one reference work here just recently and thought, oh my God, I wonder if people will get that if I write it that way. And I think they will. So it's going to feature, the main character is going to be basically Cleopatra's point person, her hatchet man. It's going to be a job called the Eye of Re. And she's going to carry Cleopatra's seal, but she'll only pull that in the most dire of circumstances. It's a position that has gone on for all of the ages of the Ptolemies. It's generally been a woman. And the character was inspired by, and for the life of me, I can't remember where I saw this image, a statue of an Egyptian woman she was wrapped completely from head to toe in a length of very thin fabric, so you could definitely make out her shape, but you couldn't make out her identity. And so I have this scene in my mind. The very first time that we see her, she's going to be sort of standing there. She will have crept up on whatever this, where Cleopatra and Caesar are confabulating about the murder that has happened, and so Cleopatra's going to call in her person to sort this out. It will be the previous Eye of Re. And so this all reluctantly, this woman is going to be the next I of Ray. And you don't say no when Cleopatra says, do it.
Now, for some of you who may be going, oh no, why not another Kate? Right away, let me say that this is Kate 21. You all got that number, right? If you've written 21 books about a character or a set of characters, they can become too familiar, and you can get too comfortable with them. And so it's good to write something else and take a little break from it, and then come back with more energy. And I think when you read this book, you will see that the gap of several years and the other books that Dana has written have created a lot of energy that shows up in K21. So I encourage you, instead of being depressed, to go away being pleased that she's going to do something else and then come back to it. However, I like the fact that she's already said she's going to write K22 a lot more than last time. Well, we didn't know if there would even be a K21. So
I always knew.
Yeah, Val?
I can't believe you weenies thought I killed her off. I mean, that book was really successful in that respect, I have to say.
It was, and you've been really pleased by that. Every once in a while I hear fiendish cackles from the back bedroom, and it's Dana going, oh, look, another sucker thought she was dead.
Oh, my God, you should see some of the mail I get. Oh, Lord. People just explode all over my website and in the comment section of the Facebook page. The Maniacs generally curate well enough to where the really all over the top ones I don't think I ever see. They just sort of like cross their eyes whenever I ask them. They won't tell me what it is that I'm missing, which is probably a good thing, because what I do see is like, holy cow. I mean, if you want to write another Kate Chugach book right now, you go right ahead, honey. Just, man. I was like, wow. It really annoys me. I'm thrilled that people want me to write more Kate Chugach novels, but I don't need to be yelled at for not writing the next Kate Chugach novel immediately. Well,
Dana has, over the course of the years I've known her, been very supportive of other writers. She's organized 2 mystery conferences in Alaska, in Anchorage, and I was very pleased that in March she was the guest of honor at Left Coast Crime in Honolulu. So some of the Maniacs went. Rob and I went. And it was wonderful to see her get this acclaim, and it was wonderful to see her be interviewed by some of her chief conspirators. I'm looking at you, Carolyn.
let me do the backstory for that.
Okay.
The thing about things like Left Coast Crime, some of you have probably been to Left Coast Crimes and BoucherCons, or at some
They're mystery conferences.
Mystery conferences. There's science fiction conferences, there's romance conferences, and it's we the writers would not be there without you, the fans. Period. End. I mean, if you're there, we're there, but there's no event to go to if you guys don't come. And it just seems to me that there's an awful lot of, I'm venturing on a mild criticism here, Barbara, a lot of self-aggrandizement as far as authors are concerned when it comes to those conferences. And I really wanted it to be about the fans, and in particular my fans. So when they asked me, I said, sure, I'll be your guest of honor if you will let me do a different thing with the guest of honor interview. Because usually you have a writer interviewing another writer for the guest of honor interview. I've done that, and it's fun. It's great, especially if you know the writer and you have a good relationship. It's fun, and it's fun for the fans, too. But I wanted the fans to be on stage. For one thing, I wanted to acknowledge the people who helped me get here in this seat. So I asked him if I could interview the Maniacs managers for my GO8's interview. And I have to say, they both said yes. Gay and Lucinda both said, they came right back, practically by return of email, and they said absolutely. And they said the very same thing. They were really happy that I was going to be doing the fans. So then I wrote to the Dana Maniacs, and they went, ah! So 4 of the 5 managers came, and that was our GOH interview. It was really cool. They're really funny, smart people.
It was a lot of fun. I was in the audience and really enjoyed it.
This one, toward the end of it, when because at the end of the GOH conference interview, you ask for questions from the audience, right? So this one, she stands up and puts her little hand in the air, and I grin because I figure I know what's coming. And she said, would you like to tell, what was it? What was your question? It was something about...
It was about K21.
It was about K21 and when I was going to sign it and where, or something like that.
Dana's not the only one who understands self-aggrandizement. There's a reason this is year 28 for the Poison Pet, right? Now, I felt that her fans should be aware of it. And actually, there were a lot of people there who hadn't had this good news, and so there were, lots of cheers and smiles because many of them still thought that Kate was dead, and why were they there at the interview? But anyway, I was just very pleased to see Dana get that recognition. The other thing I wanted you to talk about just for a minute is Story Knife and how it's coming along. Explain to them what the project is.
I have some view property in Homer, Alaska, where I live. It's right next to where I live. And I should back up and say that the very first thing that my writing has ever earned me was a residency at Hedgebrook Farm, which is as far as I can tell, the only writer's retreat for women writers, specifically for women writers in the world. It's on Whidbey Island in Puget Sound. And I was there for I'm a plank holder. I was there for their very first year. So for the 25th year, they invited me to come back at their 25th year anniversary. And they told me then that they can have as many as 1,400 applications for 40 spaces in a semester. And I thought, okay, Hedgebrook is the first time anybody ever acted around me like writing was a real job. I don't know if I'm not sure that I can tell you guys how important that is. I mean, my father, bless his heart, I loved him dearly, but I went for a long time without publishing anything, and he would always look at me anxiously and say, well, you put yourself through college bookkeeping, you can always go back to that. So, I mean, the Hedgebrook people, the very first night at dinner, Nancy, who is the person who started Hedgebrook, she's the person who wrote the checks. She inherited money from her father, and that's what she did with it. And so we're sitting at dinner, and you know how your mom teaches you that when you go out, you go to somebody else's house for dinner, you get up to help clear the table at the end of dinner, right? So automatically, I got up to help clear the table. And Nancy barked at me, sit down, just like that. She says that didn't happen, but I was there, and yes, it did. And then she smiled at me and she said, Dana, you've already done your work for the day. And I almost started to cry because I'd been in my cabin all day and I'd been working all day, and the fact that somebody acted like that was a real job, that I'd been doing real work, it meant the world to me. And then that evening, and then at dinner, I had met the other writers in the other cabins because, you're alone in your cabins to do your work. And then I had met other writers, and that's the first time I ever met other writers. So this seems to me to be a good thing for women writers in particular. So I decided, okay, I talked to Nancy about it when I went back for the 25th anniversary, and I came home and I formed a nonprofit corporation called the Story Knife Writers Retreat. And those of you who are real serious Kate fans will be familiar with the name Story Knife. And I'm going to build a main house and 6 cabins. It's modeled on the Hedgebrook model, and we started our capital campaign last year. I got 501c3, so it's, if you write a check, you can deduct it. And I'm happy to report news. We have pledges or money in hand for 3 of the cabins. And the main house, just like 2 weeks ago, we had a wonderful 2-for-1 promotion. The people who wanted to name the main house. That's what you get if you underwrite the construction of these places. The people who wanted to name the main house matched us 2-for-1. For every $1 that we raised, they would match it for 2. And we just got the last payment for Story Knife to do the whole $250,000. So we're on our way, really close to being to 1/2 of our construction funding, and that means that with luck we can start building next April.
Wow.
Maybe.
And in preparation for this, right after Rob and I came to visit you last summer, you had your first trial, a real guest, but she was a trial guest.
I have my house is the template for the main house, for the Story Knife main house, and I built a guest cabin, which is the template for the writer's cabin. And then I thought, that cabin's just sitting there, and it isn't always filled with friends and family. And so I said to Erin, our executive director that I just hired last year, I said, we should put a writer in that cabin and just see what happens. It won't be the full Story Knife experience. They'll have the cabin, but they won't be interacting with other authors. I said, but let's just try it and see what happens. So we got this woman named Kim Studerman Rogers, who has a really good idea for a book, and I really hope she writes it because I want to read it. I won't tell you what it is because I don't have her permission to talk about the idea. It's about Mark Twain. I'm pretty sure I can say that safely. And she was the perfect first fellow for Story Knife. She was just, oh God, Barbara, she was just the best. She wrote 247 pages in September that month. That's better than I did that month. She worked herself, so she participated in local community events, and she worked herself so thoroughly into the community that totally total strangers would come up to me in the grocery store and say, "How's that writer doing?" So I decided, okay then, we're going to do 4 this year. So we've gone through the selection process. We had people apply from the Netherlands and from the United Kingdom. I love the internet. So we're going to have 4, 1 in June, 1 in July, 1 in August, and 1 in September. And this is and it's still just the one cabin. Eventually there will be 6 and their own main house. Yeah.
And my plan is the Poison Pen is going to create a scholarship to send one every year. So we'll see how that works out.
That's the first I've heard of that.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. This is a very close-held idea. It didn't percolate as far as me, Missy. Anyway, thank you. Big round of applause for Barbara.
Whatever. Well, actually, in talking to Diana Gabaldon and I decided to start a writer-in-residence program here. So we have had 3 now. Some of you have met them. The first one was Charles Finch, and the second one was Michael Carita. And then last March, we had Linda Castillo here for several days, and I've already asked Deanna Rayburn to be a writer in residence at the end of January next year. And I keep saying to Diana that it's only fair, since she's paying half, that she should pick a writer. And she keeps saying, no, you just go ahead and do it. So I'm going to find another one. But I would like to take us up to maybe 3 or 4 here, and they come and they teach a workshop and they host events and they do a program over at Sun City Library, and they teach a class at Phoenix Country Day School, and they do a number of things. So it's different. They're not here to work on their own books. They are here to help other authors and talk to children and library fans, and it's a different concept. So there are a lot of different ways you can be a writer in residence, but yours is actually for people who want to write, which I think is fabulous. Have any of you ever been to like Yaddo, which is in Saratoga Springs, New York? They take in artists as well as writers. Larry Block has written a number of his books at Yaddo, for example. So there are various places like that around the country. Anything else you want to say about this book or future books?
Just one thing. When you're reading Less Than a Treason and you come to the end of Less Than a Treason, I want you to think to yourself, I wonder what Dana could do with the crooked board of a nonprofit corporation. In a Kate Shugak novel. And that's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Life, art imitates life in this case. Although my board isn't crooked.
Not yet.
Hey.
After you get your funding, you'll have to pay more attention, right? Right now, we know where it's all going.
I'm paying plenty of attention right now.
Okay. I'm sure lots of you have questions that you would like to ask Dana. So,
before we do that, Ginny, could you bear reading the dedication? Could you stand it? Could you bear? This is Ginny Sims. This is Ginny Sims, everybody. She's a Dana maniac. I don't care. You can do whatever you want. Her husband, John, was also a Dana maniac, and I'm here to tell you he was just one of the most wonderful guys. I only knew him through Facebook. I only knew him through his comments on Facebook and his comments on my website, and he died last year, sadly. So this is how I remember him.
So, living for John Sims, 1950 to 2016, stage 21 beta reader and beta maniac. And he had cancer for 3.5 years, and he also beta maniac back in the coffee early 30s.
In advance?
Yeah, of the afterlife, which is hospital. So, it's his story if you want to hear, like, nobody saying
I go ahead.
So for those of you watching the live stream, let me just repeat. Dana asked the widow of John Sims, who was a Dana maniac, sadly now deceased, to read the dedication, and it was pointed out that he brought a tremendous number of people into the Dana maniac group.
A tremendous amount of good people. I think John...
Are there any bad people in the Dana maniac group?
Actually, I don't think so.
I'm sure they're flushed out in some fashion, right?
Anyway, and the reason that in the dedication it says that he's the K-21 beta reader is that he heard the plot before anyone else. I called him, and I ran it by him, and he was pleased to approve.
Very nice. There is something. Oh, sorry. There are two other things I meant to say. I'm glad that they reminded me. In the first place, if you look at this book is published by a British publisher called Head of Zeus. I called them Zeus because I think Head of Zeus is too long. They didn't ask me when they named the name of the company, or I would have advised another name. But yes, anyway, I'm very fond of them. And in order for us to do this, and for libraries and so forth to have this book in the United States, they had it printed over here, because I would be having to charge you about $55 for this book if it had come across the ocean. And he was very nice and arranged to have it printed here. But this is actually a British book, not an American book, but it's just printed here, which is cool. And to make it even better, when you read it, you will see that not only is there a lovely little silk bookmark in it, but there's a map. There's a very cool map. He makes very pretty books. Now, the good news is, more good news is, that he is going to do a one-volume edition of Silken Song with possibly the most beautiful book cover I have ever seen, and a fabulous map, and another glorious bookmark, and the whole bit. And he will have it here when Dana returns for her annual Thanksgiving to Christmas session, and we will therefore be able to do an event for it. We try to usually do it on Small Business Saturday, which is the Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend, but it might have to be a little bit later depending on when the book gets printed and so forth. But I wanted to mention it to you now because I think it is going to be such a beautiful production. Really exciting.
He bumped it back. It was supposed to come out this month, but he bumped it back for Kate.
Who is, I might add, a bestseller in the UK. And I find that really interesting that some of the authors that we think of as Western authors, C.J. Boggs, Craig Johnson, and Dana, are huge bestsellers in the UK, although Craig is actually a bestseller in France, which is even stranger, but, whatever. So I think that's wonderful that, you've been such a big hit with the British. Right,
It
now,
is thrilling.
questions? Where?
Chopin. Yes. The question was, for the live stream audience, how does Jim pronounce his last name? Chopin.
As in the composer.
As in the composer. Please don't ask me where that name came from. Honestly, it's been 21 books. I have no idea. Yeah? They make a presence in this book, but I have thought about that, and I don't want to say too much to get people. I don't want to get people's hopes up, but I will say I've thought about it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, well, I used to practice it pretty regularly, and then I moved in 2005. I moved from Anchorage to Homer, which means I lost my teacher. And I didn't know how good a teacher I had. He was the best. And there's somebody that's starting up a Tai Chi class down there right now, and they need a bigger venue, because I went and I did form with them, and we were banging into the walls. The room was so small. So I said, I'll come back when you have a bigger room.
Now, I can add that Dana has done Tai Chi while here in Scottsdale on her very long trips in my garage. On account of...
There's our guy, Ray Saul, locally.
Who is wonderful. I even did some of it with her, but I'm not quite as adept as Dana. But it was ideal, the garage, because, you could open it and it got too hot to be out on the patio. But Dana was really very serious about it and did a lot of work. He came 3 times a week or something, and so they worked on it for quite a long time.
Yeah, back there. The first question was, are there going to be any more Liam Campbell novels? Yeah, there'll be plenty of Liam notes. If I get a good idea for a Liam Campbell novel, yeah. He showed up in a Kate Chugach novel, I'm sure, the 19th Kate Chugach novel. I don't know if he's going to have another standalone novel or not. I don't want to write a placeholder book. I want to be excited about an idea, like I was with this one. But before I could write K-21, I had to be really excited and happy about it and know it was good. So if I feel that way again about a Liam Campbell novel, yeah, but don't hold me to it, because that hasn't happened yet. And when did I first want to know I was going to be a writer? When did I first know I was going to be a writer? I thought I was going to be a journalist. I was the Seldovia correspondent for the Homer News when I was in high school. I'm telling you, I did some of the best sports reporting for away teams for basketball games that you ever read, or in this case didn't read. And then I graduated from college with a degree in journalism, and at that time they just started building the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. And the state was flooded with people, and there was no place to live, and all expenses were through the roof, and the only job in journalism I could get was, it didn't pay, I think it paid like $800 a month before taxes. You couldn't even rent a room on $800 to take home from $800. And I thought, well, okay then, I went to work on the slope. And then later, it was much later, I went back to school and got my master's degree. I'd saved up money with the slope work, and then went to work on writing novels. Also, I must say that in journalism, I never really learned how to ask the hard question, which is kind of, important if you're a journalist.
Well, it really is, but tell us about your career at Alaska Magazine, because you wrote a lot for them.
Oh, well, that was different. Alaska Magazine asked me to, they came to me in fear and in trembling, they said. Later, the editor said to me, geez, Anna, we never thought you'd say yes. They said to me that, I could hear the hesitation, and this is a guy I'd known for a long time, and he said, I don't suppose you'd travel around Alaska on our dime and write about it. Yeah! You think? So I think it was about 5 years, I was 10 issues a year, and then I wrote some articles for them as well, and that was a lot of fun. I got to go, like I said, I don't want to bang on this drum to the point where I wear it out, but Alaska's a really big place, and it's really expensive to get around. If you want to go to interesting places like Kotzebue, or you want to go out and see the sand dunes and the little Kobuk, it's going to cost you a fortune unless you have Alaska Magazine pay your way there. So I was real happy to do that.
It's not even inexpensive to go across Ketchimak Bay, it is, because you basically are flying in charter planes, little planes, most of the time, or on somebody's boat. There's not a lot of public transportation available. So it is.
Yeah. That's not cheap. Yes.
Two things I wanted to discuss when talking about starting out, but I started reading when we were in Alaska in the mid-90s, so probably through because while still I had a thing, read Alaskan authors, and I would like to read anyway. I started reading, and I thought, I know the bookstore guy. I started rereading one from the beginning, the first book, and I have to tell you, I'm so stuck. I was writing nothing. I said, you know what, now, the second book, I was just amazed. I'm like, wow, I'm being I'm here for more. So I just really your book.
That was, for the live streaming audience, one about the best compliments I've ever had about my writing. Thank you very, very much.
She was crying.
Yeah, but it was nice of you to say that basically you think everybody should or you have enjoyed rereading them from the beginning, and that's not a bad way to celebrate K21, is to go all the way back to A Cold Day for Murder.
There's a bunch of maniacs doing that, according to their comments.
But the question then was about story night. I would love to be an author, but I'm a reader.
And we need you.
Yeah. And believe me, I'm never going to be in competition with you. But do they just sit in the cabin and I don't run.
You want to know what the process is for somebody at Story Knife? Okay, there will be 6 cabins, and there will be a main house. During the day, the writers sit in the cabins and they work. Maybe they go for a walk. Nobody's holding their feet to the fire here. Once they win their residency, what they do with it is up to them. We're just providing. That's what they do at Hedgebrook, and we're modeled on Hedgebrook. That's what we're going to be doing at Story Knife as well. Kim was a workhorse last year in September. Like I said, she wrote 247 pages, which is better than I did on K21 last year in September. So it's pretty much, it's up to them. Then, because we believe that, writers need human contact, they will gather together for dinner every evening in the main house and talk shop. You have to remember, too, that most women writers are going to be married. Many of them will be mothers. Many of them will have to pay the rent. They have to look for the rent. They have to buy groceries. They have to take care of their kids. They have to get their husband off to work. They have their own jobs to go to. And Story Knife will be a place, as Hedgebrook is now, for these women to concentrate solely on their craft and nothing else. It's a huge gift, it was to me, because I got my residency at Hedgebrook before I was published as an author. I mean, nobody believed in me except for me. And my dad believed me I could be a bookkeeper. He's a great guy, though. So that's. I think that answers your question.
Yeah, so no classes?
No.
So these are already people that you or whomever feels are accomplished.
There's a curating process. There's an application process and there are people who read and then more people who read. And then it finally boils down to, this year it boiled down to 5 people and 4 were selected. Although we could have, of the 65 people who applied, I think we could have given 42 residencies. They were that good. The applications were that good.
We should add, you as an author and me as an editor, that an awful lot of writing is just thinking. It isn't necessarily writing, it's actually thinking. And when Dana was saying that the lives of many people are filled with distraction. And so if you have a place, if you only produced a few pages, but you actually were able to think through what you wanted to write, that would be a gift.
I took Kim, our writer, last year to dinner. The first night that she was there, she and Aaron, our executive director, and I went out to dinner. I looked at Kim straight in the eye and I said, if all you do is sit here and stare out the window, that's fine with me. And I meant it. She didn't take me at my word, that's for sure.
She was so close, she was probably terrified.
She did say that she would look at, from her window, she can look not into my house, but she can see whether the light is on at my house or not. If the light was still on, oh God, she still had to be working.
I can also add, as a guest, that if you were staring out the window, there could be families of moose walking on by. And Dana, in fact, has had to fence off quite a lot of her property from the depredations of the moose and other wildlife.
I wish there's one fenced area. I wish I could afford to fence the whole place off. That's not happening.
If you were there staring out the window, you would not be bored. There would be things to look at. Right. Anybody else? Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, yes. Are you talking about Shannon? Marguerite Gavin? You really? She's... And oh, yeah. And she said ADOC one time instead of ADAC? Yeah. I think sometimes, most of the time, she will email me a list of words that she's not certain how to pronounce. And there are times when she admits herself that she maybe should have added a few more words. But she does, I have to say that her work ethic is amazing. She does a terrific job. And I hate mispronunciations too. When you live in Alaska, it's always hilarious to listen to the radio because you can always tell the new announcers by the way they pronounce the local place names like Ninilchik and Kenya. And it's Ninilchik and Kenai. And they always call read out. I hate that. I have been known to actually call radio stations and say, it's read out.
Ooh. However, you might want to say a word about audiobooks since the subject came up. Where's the audiobook?
I know there's a lot of people. I get a lot of comments about it. I mean, somebody just posted, I think 2 people just posted today wanting to know when the audiobook was going to come out. I don't know. It's with Tantor, and Marguerite is narrating it. And when I know it's going to be out, you will know. It would be really beneficial if you're really hot to know if you subscribe to my newsletter on my website. Just go and click on newsletter and subscribe, because those are the people, and the Dana Maniacs, and those are the people who will know first. As soon as I have a buy link, as soon as I have an order link, I swear to God, it'll be out there.
Anybody else have a question? Yes, ma'am.
I think all the Kate Shugak novels come from either a Robert Frost, or no, the Liam Campbell novels, I think all came from Robert Frost poems. And I think later on, I think most of the Kate Shugak titles before this one came from Ruthke poems, I think. I'd have to go back and check. There was a big deal with my first Kate Shugak novel about the title. They wouldn't let me call it what I wanted to. So they forced A Cold Day for Murder on me, and then I was pissed, and I said, fine, you can just name them all then.
What did you want to call it?
Deep freeze. Because deep freeze is what the body is basically in.
Why didn't they like
And it's
that?
winter, which is also deep freeze. I don't know. Ask them.
Thought it was a novel about butchers. Okay. Sometimes, you know, you might find this hard to believe, but the two most difficult aspects of publishing any book once it's written are what to call it, which the publisher has the right to decide, and what the cover will look like. Yeah. The publisher has a copyright in the production of the book. The author has a copyright in the writing, okay, in the story. But the publisher has a copyright in the typography and the design, and they can decide on the cover. And they can ask the author, but the author does not get to overrule them unless there's some very difficult contract negotiation that has happened. And I have found that the thing that is the hardest to agree on is the image that is in the minds of people about the book. You know, what should it look like, and what should we put on the cover? And it's
norms, publishing norms change too. When I first started out in the business, they would not allow a face to be on a book, a face or a snake. That was it. No faces, no snakes.
Actually,
they didn't want snakes. They didn't want people's faces on the books because they didn't want you guys, when you read the book, to have that. They wanted you to be able to think, imagine yourself what the character looked like. That's the way it was explained to me, anyway.
I have banned skulls and snakes from Poison Pen press covers.
Yeah, I'm not even surprised.
And that's based on research I have done in 28 years in the bookstore, watching people reacting to skulls and snakes. Seriously, you know, I mean, it just doesn't work. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry? Yeah. I've sold an option, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, I think, and I've given notes on something like 7 scripts, and nothing has come of any of them. And believe me, that's okay, because some of the scripts have been interesting, to say the least. And one of them, Kate was an ex-Marine, and another, she was a bar singer. Oh, yeah. And one of them was a boy. I'm absolutely serious.
That is curious.
I was pretty awful. I said, you want to die? Go ahead. Do that. I'm going to stand back and let the Danny Maniacs run right over the top of you. It's always been Irene Bedard. But they won't hire her now because, I mean, I have a little experience now in this, and she's the woman who played the lead in Smoke Signals, a really wonderful little indie film that I think Sherman Alexie was at least a part screenwriter in. Somebody's nodding, so they know. And anyway, I've met her, and she's beautiful, and at the same time has this incredible strength. You know, I mean, she'd be perfect as Kate, but they won't hire her because I think she's in her 40s now, and they want to hire somebody in their 20s just in case it turns into a franchise, and they can let the character grow up with the series. That's the way it was explained to me, anyway.
I think there's a better chance now that they're doing serial television that somebody might be interested. And also, since we've already talked about Alaska being more in the everybody's consciousness, there certainly is a chance that somebody. But you'd have to be willing to sell it.
I'm going to have to be willing to sell it, and they're going to have to if they want to make a substantial donation to StoryNet, then we'll talk.
One possibility would be to interest them in the Liam Campbells, of which there are fewer. That's a possibility also. That I love the Liam Campbells. I really miss them, and I keep hoping you will get an inspired idea to bring them back.
I know you're not the only person. You're not the only person, and I love the characters in that series. So it's a possibility. I'm not going to say any more than that.
Anyone else? Oh, 2 more. Let me.
It's you mean like what? The park instead of the Wrangell St. Elias Park? Well, I mean, just for example, okay, the park. My park, if it really existed, would take up about a third of the state of Alaska. And I mean, I wanted to go far west enough to have the railroad on the western edge. I wanted to go north enough to have the Glen, highway on the north part. I wanted to be on the Canadian border, which of course the Wrangell St. Elias is, and I wanted Prince William Sound in there too, so I could get the fishing stories in there as well. It just, it's easier to create a place, and it's easier to invent the place, and then you can do anything you want in it without having to be constantly looking things up in how they do things in the Wrangell St. Elias Park. Instead, it's just my park, and I can do whatever I want in it.
And you have a map to prove that it's real
I do.
in this book.
I'll tell you, fans are the best. They are the best. It was a couple of years ago, a fan named Sherry Northen, and it turns out Dr. Sherry Northen, cartographer. And I said, really? I said, you make maps? And she said, why, yes, I do. And I said, I don't suppose you'd like to make a map of the park? And she said, why, yes, I would. And that's the map.
Which is wonderful. Did you have a question, ma'am? Wow, that's a really good question.
There's some names, there's some faces I can think of. Who's the guy who played the teacher in 10 Things I Hate About You? The black teacher that was so mean to her in class, but she deserved it. What was him? And if it's 15 or 20 years old, then he's probably too old to play the part. Somebody like that though, somebody with tude. I mean, seriously, somebody with tude. Don't even go there.
Right. Did you have a question, ma'am? No, I know, but I think she did.
Yes, I knew Sue. I knew Sue real well. We together, put on Left Coast Crime and BadgerCon. I mean, not just us two, but we were both part of the operating unit, Sisters in Crime, that did. You're wondering what happened to her? I think she moved outside, but I don't know. I haven't heard from her in years. What? I did not know. When? Oh God! I mean I didn't even see any news of that. No one even contacted me. I had no idea. I'm very sorry to hear that.
It's been some years. When was Murder on the Iditarod? That was back in the 90s, maybe. I know a lot of you. That was your first experience of the Iditarod. Was to read that. 2016, but she hadn't written for quite a while before that, had she?
She'd switched series. She'd moved. She started writing. She'd bought herself an RV and was driving around outside, and so she started a series about Maxie and Stretch, who were driving around in an RV outside, which I always thought was pretty clever.
Yeah, she did.
That's one way to pay for your retirement. Yeah, that's me behind you on the Starling Highway.
Oh, well.
Yeah, there's a, I don't know if this is apocryphal or not, but I have been told that every time an RV comes over the hill into Homer, that's $1,000 income to Homer. So, if that's the case, we're making a lot of money off RVs.
Yes, there are a lot. Now, we're going to end up today with two things. Dana has brought some swag to give away, and those of you who bought a copy of No Less Than a Treason, should have a numbered ticket in it, so you might want to get that out. The other thing is that Susan, over there with the champagne, has also got a really beautiful cake congratulating Dana, and I think, Susan, Dana should get the first piece. So maybe you'd like to bring it up? Oh, okay. All right, I know. All right. So here is Dana with a piece of her very own celebratory cake. Yay! Let's give her a round of applause.
And it's chocolate. We're happy about that.
All right. Now, Dana, in what order would you like to give away these three wonderful prizes?
Mug first.
All right.
Yeah.
So what we have here is a mug, Dana Stabenow, Less Than a Treason, with the cover. Nice black interior, beautiful mug.
And it has my absolute, now I did this just to harass you. I'll admit to that. I'm copping to that right up front. This is my favorite line from the book. But I also knew that people who were incensed about the ending of Bad Blood would, like, all their hair would go straight when I read this. Have I mentioned how glad I am that you're dying? And the quote is not attributed. So you don't know who's saying it about who or to whom.
That's really cruel. All right.
It is.
Patrick? 41? Okay. Pick a number between 1 and 41.
27. All right.
All right. All right. And the second, wonderful. You might want to hold this up and explain the whole thing. And what size is it?
No, but this is special. I mean, not that is special too. This is special. Okay. So it's her shirt, and I customized it by adding the cover of the book and the cover and the quote reads, yes, I wrote this up myself, she said proudly. Bernie's Roadhouse, serving the middle finger and other fine spirits in the park since 1992. This is the first Kate publication day.
I love it. So you can now pick a number that isn't 27.
13.
And finally, now you did see that Dana very thoughtfully brought down Friends of Mutt sticker, and you each, I mean, is it a sticker? Yeah. There it is. So, and there's only a limited number of them. So, thank you very much. We wanted to be sure that each of you bought the book, got one. But in addition, Dana has gotten Friends of Mutt actual stamps. As in, if you really wanted to waste one on a letter, you could do that. Or you could do...
These are real stamps. They are real stamps.
49 cents USPS. And so there's a lot you could do with those besides mail a letter. Anyway, there you are. So pick your last number.
38.
Is that you, Joe?
What? Just, it's all guys. It's all guys. There you go. You're welcome.
He comes a very long way to do this, so I'm glad that he won it. And besides, he's a dog lover.
Oh,
Oh, yes, and has helped. And by the way, David Rosenfeld's new book, Joe, got a big starred review today. It'll be out in July, so you'll be happy to know that. David Rosenfeld writes a wonderful series about a golden retriever who was actually about the human that owns him, but the golden retriever is definitely, I know you'll see a parallel somewhere in today's, which we haven't mentioned and which we won't. Yes, a dog, right? Okay. Thank you all very much for coming. Here's what I'd like you to do. I would like you all to stay seated. Well, you guys can get up and fold your chairs up against the wall. Oh, you want to say one last thing?
Let me just say one last thing. Okay.
All right.
I wanted to thank you all very, very much for sticking with me this long so that you're still here for K21. Thank you very much. She's happy too.
If you all would stay seated, if those of you facing this way would stand up and fold your chairs up against the wall and move them out of the way, Dana's going to go over to the little wooden table and